Could you imagine Luffy being like, Crocodile, on my crew? And he's like, no. And then Luffy just like grabs him and like tries to pull him and he tries to sand away. And then Luffy's like, guys, water! And Usopp and a bunch of others come up with like squirt guns with water guns and they shoot.
Imagine Crocodile on the Sunny and every time he gets mouthy, Nami sprays him with a squirt bottle like he's a cat.
No, Robin, because they, you know,
Perfect.
She knows how to handle him well.
Yeah, she's handled him before.
Welcome to our scariest season. The dead are here, they don't listen to reason. The Straw Hats arrive on the spookiest island. Zombies are dancing and spirits are flying.
Watch out! There's an invisible beast!
Watch out, the secrets go so deep.
The feeling in your throat is a worried scream. Could this nightmare be more than a dream? I'll try to keep our wits about us. Skeletons and samurai, what's the fuss?
Watch out, they're gonna come for your soul. Watch out, they've got a demon on call. Let's all hope that we survive as we travel on through season 5. Did you hear that sound? We gotta go, cause now it's time for us to start the show.
Season 5 King of the What Now? Hey, howdy ho, fellow adventurers of the Grand Line. How are you all doing?
Kat, you seem really energetic. What's up?
I'm just really excited because we're finished with Thriller Bark. They're setting off, and now we're going to get to the New World, right?
Any day now. Any day we'll get to the New World. You know, we're on episodes like 360, 370 something. And, you know, according to my watch, oh no. We have a little bit ways to go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we just watched episodes 376 through 381 of the anime One Piece, and this is King of the What Now, a One Piece discussion podcast. Who the heck are you?
Who the heck am I? What the heck is this One Piece podcast? And was it really 376 or was it perhaps 375? We here are King of the What Now? King of the What Now? Woo! King of the What Now?
Apparently we're just...
And we're welcoming our fellow adventurers to of the Grand Line, of Thriller Bark, of the Florian Triangle, wherever you might be hailing from. We're a One Piece discussion podcast starting from the very beginning. Not like episode 3, not like episode 6, episode 1. And we're going through and we're evaluating, and as always, I'm your host Joel, and you know, I also feel really energetic. You know, yesterday I was just dog tired and I'd been in a bunch of battles, but then when I woke up, I feel fine. Like all of my pain just magicked away.
Huh, that's good to know, but I have a question. Were you dog tired or were you Dogwin tired?
No, my shadow was not stolen. I was just regular dog tired. But thank you for that callback to Dogwin. May he rest in peace.
Gotcha. Well, I'm Kat. I'm the ghost of the show, and I've got little kitty paws on my hands.
Okay.
Little beans, and I can boop stuff with them.
But where do they go? Who knows?
Away.
Absolutely. Stay away from me, bro! Yes, so as Kat mentioned earlier, we were watching episodes 375 through 381. That's all of the wrap-up on Thriller Bark after Mori had been defeated. But I almost forgot the most important part of this episode, where we just get to geek out about what we've been watching and reading and listening to and all that other stuff this week.
That's right, it's chatting with the hosts.
No, wait, no, that's copyright probably, so, nope, that too, dang it! We'll come up with a musical stinger at some point that will not get us in trouble with the law.
Yes. So we've got a couple of series that we've started. One that I've started individually, one that we started together, and then one that we started separately at separate times, but we've now caught up to the same point. There's a convergence.
We've reached the singularity.
So I'm going to let you take that one, and I'll let you go first.
Okay, yeah. So everyone, grab the little ripcord that's in your chest and start pulling on it, because it's time. It's to talk about Chainsaw Man. We've made no secret of the fact that we visit the Full Spectrum podcast streams every Tuesday, And 2 of the 3 hosts were really into Chainsaw Man and talking about how awesome it was. The 3rd host, Trey, had not read Chainsaw Man. It was on his list, but he hadn't gotten to it. And the other 2 basically said, all right, we're going to get all caught up this weekend. We're on chapter 30. There's like 72. We're going to get all the way caught up. And next Tuesday, we're going to talk spoilers. And I went, oh no, I don't want to be spoiled. But I also don't want to miss the podcast episode. Only one thing to do. Read all 72 chapters. If you haven't heard of Chainsaw Man, just go and read the first chapter on Shonen Jump. I believe for all series, the first 3 chapters are free. So you should be able to get a good taste of kind of the world. Because honestly, the first chapter is just so wacky and weird that I don't want to give details. But the main character has exactly 0 brain cells. He's dumber than Luffy. He's dumber than Asta.
Somehow.
He's dumber than Naruto. Like, he is the dumbest. But he's still great in his own way, and there's another character, there's like the 3 main characters. Why is it always 3? The other, one of the
Triangle is the perfect shape.
I guess so. But one of the other characters is a character named Power, who shows up pretty early, and, you know, she's pretty great. She's cute. I like her a lot. And there's also the Sasuke type, the quiet, brooding, I don't show much emotion, Todoroki type.
Aki, yeah. And we can all agree, because this is our podcast, so we can agree, and we know for a fact that everyone agrees with us that Power is best girl.
Yeah, absolutely. There's never been any contention about who else might be best girl.
It sounds like you're really positive about this series, though.
I really like the series. I didn't quite know what I was getting into, but I think I knew a little bit more than you did when you got into it, because I watch like Giggik and Mother's Basement, and they've done rundowns of like the first episode or first chapter or whatever. It went places, and I really like where it went.
I read the first few chapters, so I got all caught up, and halfway through getting caught up, Joel went, stop sending me things, I'm gonna read it.
Yes.
And then he started reading it. But as I was going, I was like, Joel is going to love this. This is exactly up his alley. It's funny. The characters are ridiculous. There's cool fight scenes. It was a little gruesome for my taste, especially in the beginning. There's some more graphic violence than is in a lot of what I usually like to read.
He fights with a chainsaw, and there are things called devils. So, like, just try to figure out whether or not he's going to use the power of friendship to solve all these problems, or whether maybe some blood will get splattered in different places.
The cool thing about Luffy being made of rubber is he punches people and it's just like bonk. There's no viscera.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's viscera in Chainsaw Man. But no, it's really funny. I feel like of all of the shonen protagonists, they most accurately capture the 16-year-old stupid boy energy.
Absolutely. The other thing that I like about it is in a lot of the shonen that I've watched and read, you know, the big 3, One Piece, Naruto, Bleach, Fairy Tail, and Black Clover, and History's Strongest Disciple, which actually I don't think was in Shonen Jump, but it's still, I'm pretty sure, shonen categorized. They usually only ever have one person that they are very clearly, like, deeply in love with, and the entire series is basically will they, won't they, and there's never any complications. Sure, there's other girls that might like the main character, but the main character only ever has eyes on one person, and there's never a relationship there. Denji is a character who he ends up having lots of different relationships with different type of women, and some of them actually, like, advance. He goes on a date with one girl, and he goes on a date with another girl, which, when you're 16 and a pretty girl's like, do you want to go to the movies? You're like, yeah? Like, I think most people would act like that. So he actually has multiple relationships, and he considers, not like at the same time, he's not cheating on them, but he has multiple girls that he's kind of like, do I want to kiss that girl? She's pretty cute. Would I want to date her? And so there's actual, like, evolution of relationships, which I have not seen in literally any of the other shonen.
Yeah, even in just the first 72 chapters alone, it really feels like he's growing in both his philosophy and as a person.
Exactly.
And so you get to see him evolve.
Well, and he has a dumb dream that I'm not going to give away because it's so dumb, but then he very shortly achieves it, and he goes, that actually wasn't that exciting. Like, could you imagine if Luffy became the Pirate King and he was like, no, I don't like this at all.
I need a better dream.
So it's just interesting that, yeah, he came up with a really dumb adolescent-style dream, and now he's growing as a person. He's going to pursue a dream that has more meaning.
Absolutely. The other thing that I couldn't really decide whether I liked or disliked this, but I think I've settled on the side of liking it. It's extremely fast-paced.
Yes.
Really, I did read 72 chapters in about 2 days, so that might be part of the problem, but it really didn't feel like we spent a whole lot of time on any particular arc or villain. And so it's moving right along. It feels like they're going to get to the ultimate bad guy in the next, 25 chapters. And then what? Is there going to be another bad guy, or is the series going to be over? I don't know.
Mad respect for series that know when they want to end, but at the same time, I also understand fans who are like, I really like this character or these characters or the setting, please give us more. I'm guessing that there will probably be a secret villain. That happens a lot in Shonen. You have to defeat this enemy dojo in the same town as you, and you spend the first 100 chapters or whatever trying to beat the evil martial artist. But then it turns out he was working for an organization that actually had 4 more dojos, and the one you beat up was the weakest of the 5. So I'm guessing that while we have an idea as to who the characters want to fight tomorrow, I think the day after tomorrow there will be something else.
Yeah.
There'll be a fold, a complication, or anything like that.
Almost certainly.
Yeah. But why don't we go from starting our chainsaws to revving our engine?
You stole almost my exact lead-in. I was going to be like, is your seatbelt on? Because it's time to start your engine.
Whoa, I just felt a density shift. Everything is moving slowly.
Oh, gosh. So I have started Kamen Rider Drive, which came very highly recommended by our buddy Trey and a lot of other big Toku fans, but Trey is the one we interact with the most. I am 4 episodes in, and wow, do I love this series. It's like if you took Hot Wheels, the way that I played with them as a child, and then made a TV show about it, and also threw in some X-Files stuff. It's so good.
Now, we've talked about Tokusatsu, we've talked about Sentai Ranger, we did a bonus episode. Did we? On Tokyuger?
We did not.
We did not. Okay, we just talked about it.
We
okay.
could, but...
Yes. Let me say, so for those of the uninitiated, those who haven't tried it, so Super Sentai is what became Power Rangers when it came over to the States, and there's some debate as to whether or not the quality holds up. Actually, I think it's universally held true that the Japanese version is better. But in Super Sentai, you get a team of usually about 5 people, maybe sometimes there's a 6th secret member, and they each get a different colored costume, and they're a team, which I believe is what Sentai is. It's a super team. Kamen Rider, from what I know, we're relatively new, there's usually only one main hero character, and they are the Kamen Rider. And their superhero outfits usually have kind of like a bug aesthetic to like the eyes. They have like kind of big eyes. Now, I don't know how often there is an evil Kamen Rider, or maybe a Kamen Rider who's kind of morally gray, because I started watching X-Aid, which is Kamen Rider, and it had 5 Kamen Riders by the time you got to the end of episode 3, but it doesn't seem like they're going to get another Kamen Rider in Drive, or if they are going to, it's going to be a little later, I guess. So you get one main character and a bunch of other supporting characters who don't get the transformation, but still might help him in other ways.
Yeah, and to be clear, we are not Toku experts. Like Joel said, he's watched X-Aid. I gave up on X-Aid after episode 2. Drive is the only other Kamen Rider series that we've watched. But I'm really into it. So anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is that if we get something wrong, if there is usually a team eventually in Kamen Rider shows, we just don't know. We're just going off of what we've learned so far. Drive is hilarious. If you are going to pick between X-Aid and Drive, go for Drive. I really, really enjoy it. The main character's suit is really cool.
And what exactly is, you already said Hot Wheels as power, so what is the hero's theme?
Cars.
Okay.
Yeah, he has a really sexy sports car, and he can summon little tiny cars, and when he plugs them into his wristband thingy, I'm sure there's a name for it in the Kamen Rider fandom.
I'm sure you could buy it on Amazon at the time of the airing.
You promised me you would, so yeah, I'm gonna get all the shift cars, but you plug one of these shift cars in, and he gets a tire change, and he gets a different power. So the first 3 shift cars we're introduced to are Flare, Shadow, and Spike. And so he gets a fire tire, he gets a spiky tire, and he gets a shadow tire.
Which actually lets him create shurikens.
It lets him create shurikens. We've seen Shadow split itself into multiple clones, and we see him do that in the opening. So that's an eventual power he's going to get from Shadow. But then also in the first few episodes I've watched, we get Dream Vegas, which comes from the Vegas shift car, and we get like the dimensional cab. I can't even remember the name of that power, but it allows him to create portals.
Yeah. He has a tire that's kind of like a sash that goes like from one shoulder to the opposite hip. And when he equips the dimensional cab, spoilers for episode 3 or 4, I think it was, he can split that tire in half. So he has his legs and his, I think, right arm, and then his head and his left arm are two separate entities, and the head and arm can, like, press themselves against a wall and kind of like Bluno, sort of like go into the tire and come out the other side of the wall.
Yes. Now, there's one more shift car you didn't get to see, Joel, because you're
Okay.
kind of only catching glimpses of this. Its name is Hunter, and it is a police car.
Oh.
And it gives him, like, this grill-looking thing he holds onto, and he can throw it at the bad guys, and it makes a jail cell around them.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So, it's really fun. I like pretty cars. I'm not as passionate about it as somebody who's, like, really, really into cars, but I like to look at them. And I played with Hot Wheels a lot as a kid, so every time the shift cars come up, I go, yeah!
Absolutely. I have one more thing that I want to talk about, just like a very brief thing, because it's kind of a touchy subject. I've discovered some more news on YouTube. He was apparently a comedian on cracked.com. I wasn't aware of him until about literally 2 weeks ago. So I've only been seeing him on the Some More News show. It's a YouTube channel that talks about the news. Although I will say that he has a very strong liberal leaning, and so if you are more on the side of Republicans or conservatives, you might find some of his news reporting to be a bit attacking or negative or that sort of thing. And I will say that he skews far more into being humorous than necessarily going in depth, but he also goes in depth. So if you want to check him out, you can. I'm not saying that, if you have a different political leaning, that's okay. Let's just be kind to each other. But I do also really like his humor. I think he's nailed that down pretty well.
Right. This segment is kind of for things that we really like, so we can boost creators and shows and books that we're enjoying. And you're enjoying him, and that's valid.
Well, thank you very much. And do you want to talk about the last show?
Sure.
That we've been getting into?
This is one that we started together, and we are super late to the party. I feel like this was really big on the timeline when it came out, and hype has kind of died down, but we started Keep Your Hands Off Eizoken.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, the people that made this show are passionate about what they do, and I'm so happy that they are living their dream of being animators.
Yeah, for sure. If you like anime, regardless of whether you like rom-com or shonen or whatever, just watch this series. I think there's only like 12 episodes in the first season. I don't even know if it's going to get a second season. I'm unclear. We're only halfway through the season. But it goes very in depth as to the different kind of challenges that animators face and like the different considerations that they have to make when they're trying to create an anime. And there's a character who more or less represents the business side of things, because in the real world, you don't get an infinite amount of time and an infinite amount of resources to make the thing that you want. So sometimes you have to compromise. The three girls are all wonderful in their own ways. And if you haven't seen the theme song, I mean, come on, man. Just watch it. It's great.
Easily the theme song of 2020
Yes.
for me so far. Or 2019? I don't remember when this show came out.
Well, it's 2020 for us because we're watching it in 2020. How about that?
Absolutely.
I will say this. The story is not necessarily the strong point for me. I never really feel anxious for the characters, and I don't feel like they have like a struggle to overcome, because a lot of the episodes feel like a montage of them going around trying to finish their next project. But the girls are amazing, the characters are amazing, and the way that they show anime inside this anime is amazing. You'll go inside the minds of the two girls who are creating the anime, actually drawing it and such, and they'll be discussing like, oh, would this plane be too heavy to take off? Okay, so we'll rearrange the weight and we'll come up with this kind of thruster, and it's incredible. You know, just the scenes of them trying to come up with what to draw, it just blows me away.
And they're hand-drawn.
Yes.
Which is, I think, the really big draw of this show for a lot of people. For me, as a creator myself, anytime you have ever tried to collaborate on a creative project with other people, there's a certain level of frustration and compromise and loss of your own personal vision that you have to grapple with. And this show tackles it really, really well. So I've enjoyed watching that.
Yeah, I love it. And they have to interact with different, like, the art club and the sound club and the student council, which are extremely stringent about who is allowed to have club activities and not. And maybe Kanamori, the tall business side girl, maybe she's a little shady, but maybe they actually kind of need to be a little shady. I don't know if that's talking to some larger trend that I don't know about or not, but it is interesting.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of wraps up what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, really quick. So this is not going to come out until a long time after what's currently happening, but there's a lot of unrest in the world. There's a lot of bad stuff happening. And I just want to say that you guys matter to us, and we believe that everybody should be treated with kindness and respect, and everyone deserves basic rights.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say it right here now. Black Lives Matter. If you have a different political leaning or you think that movement is bullshit, I'm sorry. That is my opinion. And hopefully, by the time this episode comes out, things will be looking better, depending on your perspective.
Oh God, I hope so. It's 2020. I need things to be okay. We're, 6 months into the year, and everything has been pretty progressively miserable for everyone.
Yeah, I will say this. This morning, I finally got my first green mum in Animal Crossing New Horizons. That is, of all the flowers I've been trying to get, I have the most special yellow mums next to each other, hoping that they would finally give me a green one. I've been working on this for 2 weeks, and so that's one positive thing in 2020 is the green mums.
Congrats, babe.
Yeah,
I'm super proud of you.
Yeah, celebrate the small victories. Don't push yourself so hard that you get taken out of whatever fight you're fighting, right? If you're part of the protests and you want change and change hasn't happened yet, don't stay out in the streets so long that you get sick and you can't continue to protest. You got to take care of yourself, you know? If you're working on your own comic strip, right? Don't stay up till 3 a.m. and then get so sick that you lose a day being able to work on the comic strip the next day. Pace yourself. It's going to be okay. Hopefully. Probably.
And with that, I think we can move into our succinct summary for these episodes.
Absolutely. So not a lot happened in these episodes, and yet so much happened in these episodes. Kuma basically shows up and says, hey, I've been ordered to kill or wipe out the Straw Hat Pirates because the world government is tired of their 7 warlords getting their asses handed to them, so I'm here to basically cover it up with #fake news.
Yeah, it looks bad for the government if the pirates are beating up warlords.
Yeah, so we're going to eliminate everyone here, and we're going to say that Moria didn't lose, even though he's really badly beaten. The different Straw Hats try to basically fight him because, he's a threat, and it turns out he is really scary. We'll go into why he's scary in a second, but basically, he wipes out the entire island, doesn't kill everyone, but he knocks almost everyone unconscious, and he's about to take Luffy because he decides, maybe I don't need to kill everyone. Maybe I just need to take Luffy's head because he's the troublemaker. He's the leader, and without him, Snake without the head and all that stuff. Zoro steps in and basically says, please let me sacrifice my life in place of Luffy's. And Kuma goes, well, now I can't hurt Luffy because that would make me look bad after you made such an earnest plea. He uses his devil fruit power, again, we'll go into that in a second, to push all of Luffy's pain and exhaustion out of Luffy's body, because apparently he can do that. And so basically the idea is, Zoro, you will take on all of your captain's pain from the shadows, from fighting Moria, from fighting Doppelman, from using Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd against Monster or Nightmare Moria. You're going to take on all of that, which you will not survive. But that's your test. If you somehow survive, which is impossible, I will consider you to have paid the debt, and I will tell the world government whatever I'm going to tell them. Zoro does survive. Somehow. We'll get into it. And then the next 3 episodes are a flashback and a deep dive into Brook's backstory, and it's that sweet, sweet end-of-arc party that we get so very, very often. We learn the lyrics to a song called Bink Sake, which as far as I know is the only song other than an opening or an ending that this show has produced with lyrics, and it's a very good song. And we learn more about Brook and Laboon, and that's it. Now we're leaving the island, And on a quick note, this doesn't really have to do with the succinct summary, but Lola and the others leave shortly after Luffy and the others leave. And as Luffy and them are leaving, in the background, you see these giant figures that are, I guess they're kind of more like pillar or triangle shaped, and the narrator goes, oh, by the way, people have been disappearing in this area long before Moria moved in, and so there's still something in the Florian Triangle, who knows what it is, and so maybe or maybe not Lola's crew, they're not the Rumbar, they're the Rolling Pirates, maybe?
I think that sounds right. The Rumbar Pirates are Brook's former crew.
Right. But I think they're called the Rolling Pirates, and maybe they're about to be disappeared. Maybe they're about to be raptured. We don't even know what word to use because we didn't even get to see clearly what the things were.
They were big and they were scary. There's a possibility that they're like shadows from a sky island like happened before, but I don't think so. Shadows don't make things disappear. Oh, but maybe they're disappearing because they're getting launched up into the sky island. Maybe there's another knock-up stream.
Oh, okay.
I solved it.
Congratulations.
That meme that's like, you didn't solve shit. I solved it.
I connected the dots. Okay, and that has been your succinct summary. Catherine, did you like these episodes?
Heck yeah.
All right.
There was a lot of good info in these episodes, but there were also a lot of really powerful emotional beats. Zoro and Sanji fighting over who gets to sacrifice themselves for Luffy and take on his pain was incredible. Zoro does not get along with Sanji most of the time, but I think this is one of the clearest examples that he does care about Sanji, because he didn't want the crew's cook to die, and he knew that he could take whatever was coming, but Sanji couldn't.
Yeah, see, I would partially disagree. I do think that Zoro does care about Sanji, and he doesn't like to show it, but I think that him stepping in and trying to put Sanji down is both reflective of the fact that Zoro knows that Luffy wouldn't want any of his crew to die. And also, I think, so to set up the scene, everyone's unconscious. Kuma's about to attack Luffy, and then Zoro shows up with the shi, son, and he realizes that he's not going to be able to beat Kuma. Sanji comes up, and he's, like, shaking and trembling. Like, he looks like he's on the verge of death. So I think that you're right. Zoro, cares about him, but I also think it's a matter of, I'm going to step in because I can take it, and Luffy wouldn't forgive me if I hadn't stopped Sanji from losing his life.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a big element of that, but it's very emotional. Also, Brook's backstory. We've mentioned our buddy Trey earlier in this episode. He has a review of the chapters that these episodes covered up on his Full Spectrum YouTube page, and he couldn't get through the review without crying because of how emotional it is to see Brook and his crew have to try to leave Laboon alone, but Laboon fights to come with them anyway, and eventually they convince him to stay and say, we'll come back for you, but they don't come back. They all die, and their last act is to sing a song in the hopes that Brook can somehow get it to Laboon so he can still hear their feelings even though they're gone.
It's quite beautiful. Oda got a lot of us in the heart with those chapters, and it's a really well-told story. And again, I just love the fact that it was foreshadowed. Crocus said the crew died. I have it on good authority. We met that crew eventually, and through devil fruit trickery, he's still around, and now he's renewed his promise, and oh gosh, that is quite good.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you also liked these episodes.
I like these episodes quite a bit. I really enjoyed the Kuma fight. I am a little less excited about the backstory because it lasts for 3 whole chapters, or 3 whole episodes, and I already knew that he made a promise of Laboon. Frankie told us that a couple of chapters ago, so it was nice to see the flashback flesh out Brook a little bit more.
Ha! Not that he has any flesh.
Yo-ho-ho-ho! That's wonderful. But at the same time, it does drag a little bit, and I'm more of a battle guy. You can't have good fights without the emotions behind them, but I'm also like, the Brook backstory is pretty good.
Yeah, okay. Can we do favorite quotes before we do new information, just because we're already talking about the Zoro Kuma
Hey,
stuff?
man, you were the one who decided on this new format.
Okay,
so.
cool. Well, then I guess I'm the boss of the podcast now. Okay, favorite quotes. My ambition means nothing if I can't protect my own captain, was something Zoro said to Kuma. amazing. If Luffy dies, then Zoro wasn't even strong enough to do this, let alone go out and become the strongest swordsman. Like, what's the point after that? So,
Well, I just gotta say, that's an interesting take, because protecting Luffy isn't just Zoro's job. That's the job of the entire crew, and they can rely on each other and such. So I feel like becoming the greatest swordsman is a higher goal than protecting Luffy or his journey to Pirate King, but it does show just how absolutely loyal Zoro is. Zoro would be the dog, if they were given animals, because he is so loyal.
well, and also, if you are the world's greatest swordsman, and you can cut what you want to cut, it stands to reason you can protect who you want to protect.
That's true, too.
So if he can't even protect this one rubber man, then what is the point of him continuing on this journey?
Okay, yeah.
Another quote from Zoro I really liked is, "If I die, that shows the limit of my ability."
Mm-hmm. Well, and I believe that echoes Luffy from earlier in the series. I think at Logtown, he said something about, like, if I die here, that just means that I wasn't strong enough, or that's okay, just means that I didn't make it, and there's a lot of parallels between Luffy and Zoro if you look for it. It's usually not explicitly called out, but a lot of people have noticed similar dialogue between the two delivered, several chapters apart, or when they're with different groups of people, and I think that there's, Zoro and Luffy, he was the first crew member to join and all this other stuff. So it's just a wonderful friendship.
Yes.
And maybe some people think that they should give each other a little kiss, which if you want to do that, that's fine. That's not my jam.
Zolu writes.
Yeah, absolutely.
One favorite moment I had that I didn't write down was they're talking about how they're going to Fishman Island next. And they're excited about seeing the mermaids. And I believe it's Sanji and Brook, right? And they're talking about, can you see the mermaid's panties? And then one of the Risky brothers pipes up in this very wise voice, and he goes, "Mermaids don't wear panties." And they have the nosebleed explosion, Brook and Sanji.
And one of the Risky brothers.
And one of the Risky brothers. And it's dumb as all heck. It's ridiculous. But it was funny, too. I like that it sets up expectations for Fishman Island, and I also kind of am hoping that, expectations are subverted a little bit.
You want to see all of the mermaids in their panties.
No, I want Sanji and Brook to be ready to see some hot ladies, and they go and there's fish.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Perfect. We are going to get called out if we do not directly reference "nothing happened" from Zoro, because that is one of the most iconic moments in all of One Piece. And I wonder if maybe we didn't put it on the document because maybe it's just so obvious that we should talk about it. Zoro plunges his hands into this giant paw-shaped bubble of pain and misery. And his last words before the scene goes to black is, "Luffy's the man, will become Pirate King." Which, as far as I'm concerned, is the first time that Zoro directly states his belief in Luffy becoming the Pirate King. He did, during the Mihawk battle, call Luffy future Pirate King, but I really like the declaration. Luffy will become the Pirate King. Sanji wakes up, who he knew that Zoro was going to take on all this pain, and he had offered to do it himself, but then he got knocked out by Zoro. He goes to find Zoro, and there's just this crater. I don't think the crater was from Zoro. I think the crater was from the fighting with oars or something. But it's just covered in blood, and Zoro's shirt is in tatters. Not his pants, though, because let's keep it PG. And Sanji goes, "What the hell happened here?" And Zoro's eyes are red and bloodshot, and he's shaking, and he can barely stand up. And he goes, "Nothing. Nothing happened."
So badass.
Yeah, it's great.
I like, too, that Sanji was the only crew member still standing at the point when Zoro offered his life in exchange for Luffy's.
Yeah.
And so Sanji is the first one who goes running looking for Zoro because, oh no, Luffy's alive. Does that mean the idiot swordsman is dead? And, again, these two characters that don't really get along, they still care about each other and they still want one another to be alive.
Yeah, it's great. We'll have to circle back to that because we have some thoughts from the crew relating to that scene, but it's very powerful, and it is a sacrifice that maybe the other crew members would be willing to make, but we don't get a situation where someone is told you are guaranteed to die if you do this, and then they do it anyways because it's good for Luffy. I really enjoy, too. So it turns out that the Risky brothers actually somehow were conscious after the explosion, and they saw the whole ordeal with Zoro taking on Luffy's pain or offering to do so. And they are super excited. They're like, we've got to tell everyone because that was so cool. And Sanji grabs them and pulls them aside and he goes, it would hurt his pride as a man. He doesn't say it quite that, like, deep and that, like, respectfully, but he basically is like, don't tell people, consider Zoro's feelings. And then the two Risky brothers, Luffy's like, were you going to say something about Zoro? And they look at each other and they go, we can't tell you because we gotta respect his feelings. And they both kind of saunter away the way that Sanji does. And, that's so good. Sanji has disciples, apparently. Luffy has the Kung Fu Dugongs. Zoro has Johnny and Yanni, as we called them here on the podcast. And Sanji has the Risky brothers.
Man, talk about zero brain cells. The Risky brothers they're doing their best, but...
Also, I want to point this out. I think this was clear to almost anyone who was watching these, but just to be explicit, the two squirrels that were carrying Usopp and Nami and Chopper to Perona or Moria or Hogback, they were also called the Risky brothers, and one of them had a mask that was very similar to... I think of him as the older Risky brother, but I have no idea. We don't even have individual names for them, but one of them is tall and skinny, the other one is a little shorter and a little rounder, and he has kind of like a lucha libre mask that covers the top half of his face. So those two were definitely the shadows that were from them.
Yes, exactly. And Lola is the shadow of Lola.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It amazes me that Moria paused to find out their names so he could name the zombies after them.
Yeah, well...
Because, like, Oars didn't remember Luffy's name.
The only ones that we saw him animating, like, indirectly interacting with, the only ones that got names are Ryuma and Oars. But Ryuma and Oars had identities before they were buried. So for the Dogwin, that wasn't like a famous person that Moria went and dug up their grave. It's just a dog and a penguin that Hogback decided to sew together. So I wonder if they're not given a name, I wonder if they will remember their name. But if Moria says, your name is Tom, they'll be like, who the heck is this Bob guy? You know,
my name
like
is
that.
Tom. Okay, that's fair. Did you have any other favorite scenes or quotes?
This isn't necessarily a scene, but it's something that I want to point out. I'm a sucker for named attacks and special attacks and stuff like that. And if you pay attention, there's certain attacks that show up a lot, and there's certain attacks that are less common. So things like if you ever see Luffy use Jet Gatling on someone, Gear Second Jet Gatling, you can then say, that's the move that defeated Lucci, and you can tell whether this new character is as strong as Lucci if they got knocked out, or you could tell, oh, they're stronger than Lucci because they took it and they didn't get defeated. So one part of what makes this arc so great for me is that when Luffy is Nightmare Luffy, he uses Gum Gum Storm, which I swear to goodness has only been used twice. That was the finishing move against Crocodile, and now here he used it against Oars, which was great. And several of Zoro's attacks that we very rarely see also showed up. He used the Shishi Son Son or Lion Draw against Kuma. When we discovered that Kuma was a cyborg, we'll circle back to that, that's pretty important. But he used the Quick Draw attack. He used Bleeding the Wolf, which he last used against Hachi. When Hachi had 6 blades, he was able to dodge them all perfectly by using that attack.
I want to jump in here really quick. I was really proud of myself. Zoro used that attack, and I went, hey, it's Bleeding the Wolf. And Joel was like, you remembered what it was called, even though it was different in the subtitles. Good job. And I felt very, very proud.
Today, Catherine earns a gold star on her record as of this episode of the podcast. And the last one that we also saw was when they were setting up their final combo attack to break Oars' spine, which is still just metal as hell. But Zoro used the secret technique, Sanzen Sekai, or 3,000 Worlds, something that we have not seen since he fought against Mihawk. That was the final attack he tried to use, and it didn't work against Mihawk, but it was a little bit more effective against Oars.
Oh god, how strong is Mihawk? How did he compact so much strong into that lithe, vampiric frame?
Maybe he was a giant, and then he had Kuma with his push-push fruit push him into a smaller form.
Could Kuma do that? I think he could. His fruit does whatever it wants.
Well, no, because he compressed the air, but as soon as he let go, it decompressed. So I think he could, while holding on to someone, keep them in a squished form. But as soon as he let go, I think they'd expand back to their normal size.
Okay, fair enough.
But, okay, I think those are all the moments for me that really stand out. So, yeah, I think we're ready to move on.
Are you telling me that iconic Chopper scooping loaches with a basket at the party was not one of your favorite scenes?
No, but I'm glad that you looked it up and were able to verify that that is indeed a reference that went straight over my head.
Yeah, it's like a comedic dance that people in Japan would know, even though it's not necessarily performed as often anymore.
Okay, sure. It's sort of like if someone in an American cartoon at a party did the Macarena and everyone was laughing and like, oh, it's that dance.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Let's get into some new info.
Yes.
We got a lot, I would say.
Let me actually apologize on mic to you for my misdeeds. When we were recording earlier episodes in Thriller Bark, you said, do we know the name Kaido? Do we know that Kaido defeated Moria? And I said with absolute confidence, no, we don't know the name Kaido. And then I cut that audio out because why would we leave something like that in if we're not going to talk about Kaido? Well, it turned out, yes, we did in fact know that Kaido was the name of the person who defeated Moria. What hadn't been confirmed in previous episodes, that has now been revealed in these episodes, is that Kaido is one of the 4 emperors of the New World, which is huge. We now know the names of 3 of the warlords. And
Of the Yonko?
what did I say?
Warlords?
Yeah, we know names of 4 of the warlords too, I'm pretty sure. But no, out of the 4 great emperors, we know the names of 3 of them. And also the zombies made a pretty big deal of like, Maria's as strong as Kaido, so Kaido must be pretty physically strong. I know that if you get to the New World, you're already a certain level of strength, but I'm just holding out that maybe that 4th member of the warlords is a guy in a wheelchair with a really big head, okay?
Just a giant head, just an absolute melon of a honker.
Yeah, he attacks with psychic attacks that are effective against Robin, but somehow don't affect Luffy. I don't understand what this is. Does this boy not have any brain cells in his body? Anyways, so yeah, we learned that Kaido is in fact an emperor, which means it's very likely we will run into him somewhere down the line.
Now, I'm gonna reveal my lack of paying attention here. When did we first learn of the term Emperor of the Sea?
Garp told us at the end of Water 7 when he was visiting Luffy and he said, by the way, your dad is a dragon. By the way, I'm your grandpa. By the way, here are the 4 warlords. Whitebeard and Shanks are among them. He just dumped all of that info. I'm surprised Luffy wasn't buried underneath all the info.
Honestly, that explains why it fell out of my brain. I've got a tiny hole that my brain cells are leaking out of. And there was so much information at once that some of it just went sloop right out the brain hole.
In this episode of the podcast, we are sponsored by the word brain cell. Count how many times we've said it, folks, and if you email us the correct number, you will win a prize. I'm not prepared at this point to offer prizes.
I have more Cotwin stickers.
Okay, yeah,
I will
perfect.
send somebody a Cotwin sticker. It's our little logo, and it says King of the Wood now at the bottom. It's cool. I'm interested in the Emperors. It seems like the Warlords are really tough as is. How do you fight Bigger Thing? They gonna get stronger?
Well, and it's really hard sometimes to not talk about future knowledge on this podcast, but the name Emperor implies an empire, and an empire is multiple kingdoms, under one banner. So that almost kind of makes me think that these people must have large armies of pirates, like bigger than Don Krieg. Like Don Krieg's like, I have 1,000 pirates, look at the size of my... And the Yonkos are like, we eat 1,000 pirates for breakfast, dude. What are you even talking about? And Moria kept going on and on and on about, all my crew died. All my crew but me died at the hands of this guy, so he must be brutal. Or Moria's really brutal. Kaido is a really nice guy, and Kaido's like, stop, in the name of peace. And Moria's like, I will pillage your village and steal all your women. And Kaido's like, I'm sorry, dude. And he just beheads all of them.
Pillage your village.
Pillage your village!
Well, and you can time mark sections of the podcast, right? You've been doing that for a while. So do you mind if I step into partial spoiler future knowledge territory for a second here?
All right, folks, you've heard it here. If you want to avoid spoilers for things past Thriller Bark, I'm going to put a time code in the description of the episode. Unfortunately, it won't actually take you to those times. I haven't figured out how to do that, but you will be able to manually fast forward to that time code.
Perfect, and I'm going to try to be vague anyway. The current arc that we are in the manga we have finally seen what Kaido is and what his deal is. I really feel like a lot of what happened in Thriller Bark is foreshadowing and setting us up for what's going to happen in this current arc. And I'm on my knees hoping and praying that Moria comes back, because I feel like he couldn't defeat Kaido by himself. But if he teams up with the Straw Hats, if he puts a bunch of shadows into Luffy and they use their combo attack, you see what I'm getting at?
Absolutely.
And I think it would be really cool. And one of Oda's strengths as a writer is he can plant these seeds, in chapter 1, in chapter 200, and then not bring them back until chapter friggin' 857. So I'm really looking forward to having some of the seeds planted in Thriller Bark finally bloom in current arc.
Okay, absolutely. Attention, we have escaped the spoiler zone. Now you can continue your journey without fear of spoilers. So yeah, I mean, Moria having a backstory is interesting. Not every character we meet has had a backstory, and the Shichibukai they're a huge part of the story, it seems like. So I'm excited to see if Moria comes back, or if his backstory comes back, or if Moria fought against Kaido with some other pirate who didn't get as depressed as Moria, and maybe Luffy will meet them and they'll be like, oh, you defeated Moria? Cool. For reasons, I'll join you. I don't know. It'll lead to something down the line, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I mean, that's all I really have to say about Kaido at this point. We just have a name, and that's really it, but it's a name that will be important. Most names that are mentioned are going to... If someone said, oh yes, a mysterious person in the Marines, you're like, okay, well, that's interesting. You don't want us to know the name. But if they say, oh yeah, the people who created Thriller Bark were named Mr. Bronze and Dr. Silver, you'd be like, okay, we're going to meet those characters now. We definitely know their names, so put that in your brain box for later.
Oh, is that like the Bird Box? Sponsor us, Netflix. Speaking of important people, we discovered our pal Lola was not born in, one of the blues, like most of the characters we've met so far.
Or even on the Grand Line.
Or even on the Grand Line. She was born in the New World, and her mom is a big shot pirate there. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? That's exciting.
Yes. Now, when these episodes first came out, I don't remember if I immediately was like, oh, but I think eventually I came to the conclusion before it was confirmed or denied and we found out anything about Lola's parents. But that's another bit of foreshadowing that you can guarantee is going to happen, because Lola says, if you need help, go to my mama. And so you're like, okay. However, right now, in the world of One Piece, the only named organizations that we know are the Revolutionaries, the Seven Warlords of the Sea, the Emperors, and the Marines. And the Marines are not pirates, the Revolutionaries are not considered pirates, and I doubt that Lola would say, my mom is an important pirate, rather than my mom is a warlord. So it seems like, or it would be possible to theorize, that maybe Lola's mom is a member of the Emperors.
Well, and it surprises me that she wouldn't say, my mom is a Yonko. So it could also be that her mom is like a general in one of the Yonko's pirate fleet.
Or maybe there's more information we don't know. I'm just saying, from the information we know about famous pirates, that's the only other group we know of in the New World. But maybe there's independent factions of pirates that aren't aligned, and maybe that's when Luffy will need their help. He'll be like, I don't know if I can fight an entire empire of pirates. Oh, but here's another group over here, and they're willing to help me out because I saved Lola? Nice.
Yes. And she gave Nami her mom's Viva card, which is pretty cool, because she explained what Viva cards were. Back in Alabasta, you'll remember that Ace gave Luffy a piece of paper, and he said, this piece of paper will bring us together again someday. And we all went, what? It's a piece of paper, my friend. But it turns out, in the New World, they have a special method of combining your toenails and hair into a pulp and making paper out of it. Mm-hmm. And the pieces of the paper will always pull toward one another. So you'll always know which direction the person is in if you have a piece of their Viva card. It also reveals the person's vitality. Luffy pulls Ace's Viva card out of his hat, and it is all crumpled and on fire, and it looks like it's almost been destroyed. these Beaver cards can't burn, and they're impervious to water, they're waterproof, so it implies some bad things about Ace.
It's implying that he's in bad shape right now. We even have a moment where the different crew are like, do you want to go help your brother Ace? And Luffy goes, nah, he's on his own adventure. Once he gets himself out of this mess, his paper will go back to normal, and I'm sure it'll be fine. But, in a related note, you bring up the Beaver card just means that all the strings are coming together, because we already knew that Blackbeard was made a warlord after defeating Ace, and his vitality isn't doing good, so it seems like maybe he's not being taken care of. I mean, I guess that we don't expect the Marines to give him like 3 square meals a day and give him access to a treadmill, but this seems like it's going to a head, because Ace, following Blackbeard, showed up as early as Alabasta. Blackbeard's name was dropped back in Drum Island. We got the Blackbeard versus Ace battle after Water 7, so it seems like every other arc or so, Oda gives us a little bit of a piece that will eventually create a whole picture.
Exactly. And we love puzzles.
We love puzzles, and we love getting one piece at a time.
Oh, gosh. But yeah, I'm just spitballing here, but we know that Ace is a member of Whitebeard's crew, and we know that the Yonko are big and important, and that the Marines don't screw with them. So I'm a little concerned that Ace is not doing well, because Whitebeard's not just going to sit back while the government messes with one of his generals.
Well, and what was one of the first things we were told about Whitebeard? Don't pick a fight with Whitebeard. If you're smart, you will run away. And so we're coming up to something. Clearly, momentum is building. The other thing that I want to point out is, if we are told not to mess with the 4 Emperors, because they're one of the 3 major powers, along with the Navy, or Marines, and the 7 Warlords, if they have captured Ace and are deciding to do something about it, I would suggest that means that the Marines are preparing to shift the balance of power and they're ready to make a move. So, do they have secrets? Do they have a government conspiracy going on? Which I think might nicely lead into something else that we learned.
Yeah, well, and I was going to comment on that in relation to the Ace stuff anyway, because we learned Kuma is a cyborg. Maybe that means they're turning Ace into a cyborg.
Oh, no.
Yeah, make him a robot plant on Whitebeard's crew.
He can't be a plant. He wouldn't be able to talk or send information. I'm sorry, that joke was not found funny. That joke was found hilarious.
Oh.
Okay, so Kuma is a cyborg much like Frankie, but he even says, like, Zoro goes, "Are you a cyborg like Frankie?" And Kuma goes, "It may be accurate to call me a cyborg, but I'm nothing like Frankie." So, alright, maybe he's referring to the fact that Kuma wears pants. Maybe there's 2 types of cyborgs. Those who wear pants and those who refuse.
When Kuma got cyborged, he got to keep his balls.
Oh, I see. So what you're telling me is that he's a cyborg who fucks.
No, I didn't mean to imply that. There's none of that in my wholesome pirate show.
Like, listen, we could do an FMK of the 7 Warlords of the Sea, and I think we just figured out which letter you'd assign to the tyrant Kuma, Bartholomew Kuma.
Anyway, he was turned into a cyborg, also known as a pacifista, by the mysterious Dr. Vegapunk.
Now, really quick note. Not all cyborgs are pacifistas. Kuma specifically is something called a pacifista. I just want to, that's not the government's name for people like Frankie. That's their name for Kuma specifically.
Yeah.
But we saw him shoot lasers out of his mouth that melted a beam behind Zoro, and he was really freaked out about that. But he also has a devil fruit. So I'm wondering if Kuma has a devil fruit because Vegapunk is the man who has figured out how to feed fruits to inanimate objects? Or was it because he had the fruit before he got turned into a cyborg? If Frankie ate a devil fruit, would he be able to get its powers? He says he has no interest in eating it, but I really wonder if you eventually get to the point where, I don't know, you just a brain and then a robot body, would it be possible?
Well, and does Frankie eat, or is he powered on cola alone? Would you have to make, cola fruit juice for him to eat a devil fruit?
You just put the devil fruit in, a blender or something like that. I have no idea. Also, this is speculation and has nothing to do with this episode. We're running out of time anyways, but if you took a devil fruit and you cut it into slices and you gave the different slices to different people and they all tried to eat it at the same time, what would happen? Would God intervene, be like if you took a fruit and you divided it up and you gave one to Nami and one to Usopp and one to Sanji and one to Zoro, would God be like, Nami swallowed her piece first, so she gets the power?
All right, assuming they all take their bites simultaneously and
Yep.
swallow simultaneously, this is what happens. Are you familiar with Shazam, the DC hero?
Yes.
All right, they Shazam it. When they use their devil fruit powers, they fuse into a single being.
Zoro's sword, Sanji's kick, Usopp's nose, and Nami's lightning. We've done several of these jokes throughout the course of this podcast of amalgamating the different Straw Hats together, and I love it. I'm absolutely here for it. Oh my god, what if you took Zoro's shadow and put it inside Sanji's body?
Hell yeah.
Would he just explode? Would he be like, no?
Oh god, I'm so horny. I hate this.
What?
That's what the shadow would feel.
What? If Sanji had Zoro's shadow?
Oh, okay. That's fair. I'm just trying to say that Zoro's shadow would not approve of his body's hornery.
Okay. I mean, we already have confirmation of Kuma's activities, so...
I didn't do that on purpose, by the way. I did do it on purpose. And we talked about Kuma's devil fruit.
We have not officially started talking about that. It's on the docket, and it's time to talk about that.
It's time to pull it out of my pocket.
Okay, but really quickly, I need to give like a really short Japanese lesson, and I am not a Japanese professor. I'm not very proficient, but I do know enough to get by, and I have the Duo program. The Japanese written language actually came from China. China had developed a writing system. They started trading together, and eventually Japan got this system, and that's when they officially decided to start writing things down. Some of the words in Japanese language can have multiple pronunciations or multiple meanings or whatever, or there are homophones because sometimes the Japanese will have had a word that represented an idea, and then the Chinese would have a different word that represents that same idea. So now you kind of get one symbol that's pronounced two ways, because there's the Japanese reading and then there's the Chinese reading. That is true of the numbers. So if you ask me to count to 5 in Japanese, I would say ichi, ni, san, yon, go. Okay, so sometimes when you are counting things, the numerals change a little bit. This is a really long lesson, and it's really not that important, but what it comes down to is that even though mu is not how I would say the number 6 as I was counting, I would say roku if I were just counting, mu in some situations does represent the number 6, which is interesting. If you look at Luffy's fruit, go mu, Luffy's unofficial number or official number, I don't know, is 56, because that's the name of his devil fruit if you wrote it in number form. Okay. Chopper, the Ito, is 1 and 10, and the Yomi is 4 and 3, maybe? I don't have my list in front of me. Let me see. Yomi is 4 and 3, and the Hana no Mi for Robin is 8 and 7. If you look at the numbers we have on the crew right now, from their devil fruits, you would have 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10. The only numbers that you're missing are 2 and 9. 2 is Ni, and 9 is Q. If you put those two together, you get Nikyu, which is the word for paw. Okay? So Kuma has eaten the Niku no Mi, and it's very interesting because if you were to look at the devil fruits as numbers, the only 2 numbers we're missing from the first 10 is the fruit that Kuma has.
That's some conspiracy level stuff.
Isn't that
like
great?
it. Yeah.
I also found out while doing some research on this, because this is not a theory that I came up with. I am merely trying to explain the theory for anyone who has either heard of it and doesn't get why Gomu would be 56 or 5-6 when, Roku is 6. And I'm also just explaining for people who have never heard the theory. But someone was saying that apparently the Sunny's number is 325 because San Ni Go sounds like Sunny Go. So, cool.
I wish that there had been a way to make the Sunnies number 365, because then in addition to representing like sunshine and joy, it also would have been like, we do this all year,
day.
year long.
The sun don't stop when you're upon the pirate or the Straw Hat ship.
You've heard of the sun don't set on the British Empire? Well, this sun does. Get wrecked.
Okay, so let's talk about Kuma's power. He has paws on his hands, maybe paws on his feet, because when I think of paws, most animals have paws on either both sets of limbs or neither set of limbs, right? So he might have paws on his feet, and it seems like anything he touches gets sent flying, basically. He can push the air, and it creates a shockwave attack that can hurt Frankie, despite Frankie having the metal front half. He touches a rock, and you see it just go flying into the air. I'm pretty sure that's what happened to Perona, because, he bapped her and then she went away. But he can also put his paw against someone and push out all of their pain and exhaustion. So it clearly is one of those fruits that can kind of do whatever you need it to do. But also, what other abilities does he have? Can he push out someone's anger and just get them to, like, calm down? Can he push out their emotions and they just go, bleh?
Yeah, or, like, could he be, like, a liposuction surgeon? Could he push all the fat out of someone? Could he push your willingness to fight out of you? Could his paw power operate like Perona's hollows?
Yeah, okay, so here's the thing. I don't want this to be too bad of a mental picture. But the pain and exhaustion is an immaterial thing. It's a concept. So when you push it out of someone, no problem. But fat is physical too. And so if he tried to push the fat out like liposuction, I'm pretty sure that they're just like their side would explode.
It would melt. It would ooze out of your pores like melted butter. Joel's making the best face,
I'm too horrified to
guys.
continue this podcast. I have to go.
All right, that's
go lie down for a bit. No, I really do want Kuma to come back, and I really do want to see how his fruit power works. And I think that's exciting. I also love that because it's paws on his hands, when he shoots the shockwaves, they are paw-shaped. And when he creates this giant air bomb by basically pushing a bunch of air into a small space and then letting go so it expands, it's like a concussion bomb. And the pain that he pushes out of Zoro is also paw-shaped. So that's his brand, I guess.
It's super silly, but in that exactly One Piece flavored way that we love.
I also do want to point out, because no one told Luffy how the pain-pushing thing works, because it was, was Zoro the only one who saw the fruit power? Like, was that after the bomb went off, or... No, because it doesn't matter. Zoro's the only one who knows that the paws can be used to push pain and exhaustion out of a person's body. So when Luffy wakes up and he's fine, he's like, I feel great. Everyone's like, that's impossible. You fought harder than any of us. Why is Zoro mysteriously exhausted? That doesn't make any sense. And I just love the fact that, like, two of the crew members are like, no, but they just don't tell the other crew members. I highly doubt Zoro's sacrifice or, jumping into the pain bubble paw thing will be relevant later. I don't think that they're going to be like, Zoro, your lifespan is shorter than it should be because of that time with the paw on Thriller Bark. But for those who are keeping score or who want to theorize or who care about the nitty-gritty details, technically, Sanji, Zoro, Brook, and Robin all know about this deal with Kuma. Usopp and Nami and Chopper, they were out in the explosion. Brook was awake, but because he has no eyes, it looked like he was asleep, so he just pretended to be asleep, and he heard and saw the whole thing. The Risky Brothers were apparently awake, and they saw the whole thing. Sanji was there, Zoro was there, and Robin heard it when Sanji was talking to the Risky Brothers. She made her ear sprout nearby so she was able to hear the conversation, and so she knows. So for some reason, if in 700 chapters or 3,000 episodes, someone goes, the only way we'd be saved if we knew how to push pain, but we don't have anyone here who knows how to do that, those are the people who could say, we know someone who can do that, it's Kuma.
The tyrant with the big balls.
Oh
I'm sorry. But yeah, no, I think that kind of covers everything we wanted to talk about in terms of new info. Did we get everything on Vegapunk?
We did have a quote about Vegapunk from Kuma. Apparently, the world as a whole referred to Vegapunk as the man who is 500 years ahead of everyone else. Which is interesting because right now the only thing we know about Vegapunk, or I guess we know a couple of things. We do know he's the one who fed devil fruits to things.
We know he has the coolest name in all of One Piece.
Vegapunk is a great name. But here's the thing. If Vegapunk is 500 years beyond society, and he built a cyborg, and Frankie also built a cyborg, is Frankie 500 years ahead? Or is the cyborgery of Kuma just super advanced?
I was going to say, we know that Kuma he was like, I'm nothing like Frankie, and his alloy was too hard for Zoro to cut, and Zoro can cut steel. So I think Dr. Vegapunk and his technology represent what Frankie could become if he keeps learning and growing.
Sure, absolutely. Well, and Frankie does not shoot beams, you know? I believe they made a couple of jokes about, is Frankie going to shoot a beam in Water 7 when he showed up? And that never happened, but we definitely saw a beam come out of Kuma's mouth.
What? That was awesome.
Yeah, it also appears that his eyes are some kind of scanner apparatus for Kuma, so maybe there's some kind of like Ethernet or database or something. Ethernet's not the right word, but maybe he can download information from some remote location.
Imagine if there were like a dozen of these Kuma robots and they could all like beam up to a central tower, like a cell tower.
Oh, they have like a hive mind or something, or just multiple bodies. Like, we defeated Kuma! I successfully transferred my knowledge and power to another Kuma nearby.
Oh, gosh.
Do you think Kuma was as quiet and reserved as he is now before he became a cyborg, or do you think that's part of, like, he lost a little bit of personality when he
That's a really good question. Well, because we know he was referred to as the Tyrant, but Tyrant has very specific connotations for me, and he didn't come across as sadistic or dominating. He didn't even really seem like he wanted to kill the Straw Hats. And so I think you're right that he lost some of his human heart and personality when he was turned into a cyborg.
That's why Frankie's only half robot, because he needs to retain his human personalities. I do also want to point out, you were saying, you know, the specific connotations of the word tyrant. Now, I was pretty sure that tyrant is related to, like, kingship, like it's a ruler who rules in a specific way, and that does appear to be part of the definition. I just looked up the official definition. So, was he a king or an emperor, maybe? Was he a former emperor? I don't know. Vegapunk did apparently select Kuma because he respected Kuma as a warrior, so yeah, I don't know, man. He must have been really strong and really well known. And then Vegapunk was like, hey, you want to be a robot? But also I wonder how many people know that Kuma's a cyborg. Is it well known? Or is it known only by the Shichibukai and the three generals? Who knows?
Is the fact that he's a cyborg the reason why he's the only warlord who seems interested in doing his job? Like, ideally, the warlords are all supposed to be government-sanctioned pirates.
Yeah, and they do mention that he's the lapdog that follows the government's orders, so I'm going to assume yes, because One Piece has a very specific definition of pirates. Whether you are pillaging, or burning, or attacking, or making friends, or looking for treasure, there's a certain pride that goes into pirates, and all of the pirates that don't have that pride get weeded out super early. So I would assume that any pirate worth their salt who would be scary enough for the government to say, hey, do you want a paycheck? They would have to be independent enough to not do as the government tells them 9 times out of 10. So yes, I think that Kuma is essentially a drone that follows orders perfectly well. I myself am a computer scientist. I program and such, and I have a colleague whose favorite thing to say is, programs are like little gremlins. They will listen to everything you tell them to do. But the problem is that they will listen to everything they do. They will they will carry out your instructions exactly. But at the same time, Kuma had like a sense of honor. He's like, my honor wouldn't let me hurt Luffy, so he must have some humanity left. But I think his obedience is definitely part of that. Kuma is a gremlin that will follow the world government's instructions to the T.
Exactly. So we're running a little long. I think we're ready to get into comments from the crew.
Thoughts from the crew?
On our notes, it's written down as comments from Twitter, so I started to say comments from Twitter, and then I went, nope, it's thoughts from the crew, so it turned into comments from the crew.
Someday we will receive our first email from a fan. I think we have gotten one email with some fan art that we use, but someday we'll get thoughts from the crew via email. And then we can't say thoughts from Twitter. That's the problem.
That's fair. I've since updated our notes.
Oh, good. So, we have 2 people who wrote in today who had some thoughts. We have Mac, Red Hair Rants, And they were saying that this was a fantastic ending to the arc. Kuma is the first antagonist that it truly feels like the Straw Hats have no chance of defeating, in their opinion. The sense of unease you feel as a viewer is chilling. MVPs are Zoro and Brook stole the show with an iconic sacrifice and a heartbreaking backstory. I absolutely agree. Crocodile was scary, but I kind of get the impression that if all of the Straw Hats teamed up against him, they'd probably be able to take him out. You know, I'm sure Usopp and Nami would find some way to wetten the sand, and then Zoro would just cut him in half. But we literally had almost everyone except for Luffy try to attack him, and they could not do it. And if he can deflect anything, then, like, what? You know? And I didn't include this, Sanji kicked him in the face, got a direct blow, and he fell to the ground clutching his leg. This is a guy who, a couple of episodes ago, launched freaking building pieces like Jenga pieces, and it didn't affect him at all. So what is Kuma made out of?
Some kind of hyper 500 years in the future ally. Oh my gosh! What if Vegapunk is from the future?
Interesting. How would there be like a go back in time devil fruit?
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I don't like it either. I don't like time travel, but I mean, maybe he's just really smart. The other theory, I think that there are characters that are from space, and we've gone into that a little bit. We'll get into it more when some of those characters show up, but maybe he's from space.
Okay, yeah, maybe. I think it would be interesting if there was a reason that he was 500 years beyond everyone, but if it was something like a devil fruit, you'd assume that at other points in time, someone else would have the power.
It's also cool just to imagine that he's super smart, so...
Okay. Another comment from Mac is, one of my favorite scenes in Thriller Bark comes in 381, where Brook and Zoro have a nice moment paying respect to both the Rumbar Pirates and Yubashiri. It's a small scene, but I adore this interaction. I agree. It's interesting that Zoro is holding a funeral for his sword. We know that he directly dealt with the death of a friend that he was unable to stop, I guess. Those murderous stares. And so it's nice to have him showing respect to the sword, Yubashiri.
Absolutely. Well, and I like that Brook is already bonding with other members of the crew.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
because
absolutely.
He's Nakama now. Like, I don't think Zoro would be willing to do this with a stranger, but it's okay with Brook.
Well, and another thing from that scene is Brook goes, oh, by the way, I joined your crew, because that officially happened while Zoro was still asleep, because he needed some rest after taking all of that pain on. And Zoro goes, man, you have tough luck. We're hard to handle. And, like, that's so cute. Zoro is sometimes an idiot, but he's also kind of the dad of the crew a little bit.
His brain cells may be few in number, but they are warm. Mac also said some things we've already covered, a lot of the really cool foreshadowing, for example, that sows seeds for future arcs. And she said, I always dwell on Luffy's decision not to go after Ace at this moment. Any speculation on that?
We might have to put up the spoiler alert, type of thing, but I think that Oda very specifically had Luffy not try to help Ace for reasons. I think that he, as a writer, he was like, okay, it would be bad if I followed this path, so I need to find another way of...
Do you think it makes sense for Luffy's character that he chose not to go after Ace in this moment?
Honestly, no, because Luffy cares so much about all of his friends and whatever, but at the same time, I guess he does have to grapple with the fact that Shanks is going to be an enemy if he meets Shanks on the sea, and Ace is his enemy if he met Ace on the sea. So I guess, in a sense, it doesn't make sense, because Luffy is the type who would definitely try to save everyone who's important to him, but it also makes sense in that once you're on someone else's crew, sorry, that's it, like... So I don't know, I guess maybe Luffy would never form an alliance with another pirate based off of this information, but again, I'm just going to have to circle back and say, I think it's more Oda trying to take the story in a specific direction, more so than a character or a moment that really makes 100% sense for Luffy.
Absolutely.
So I retweeted your tweet asking for thoughts, and I said something about like, oh yeah, who had like the best moment and stuff. And so we got some more comments from Mac. Zoro's sacrifice is an iconic moment, but that Sanji was right there about to do the same is sometimes forgotten. While any Straw Hat would have been willing to risk it all for Luffy, I think Zoro knew he was the one with the best chance of being physically capable of surviving it. Yeah, and I totally agree with that. We saw how beat up Sanji was, and in fact everyone else wasn't strong enough to survive the concussive blast from Kuma's shock. And so I do agree that Zoro knew that he was the only one who's going to be able to survive it. But I just love the fact that Sanji even tried to offer himself up, because I'm sure that he sees Zoro's dream as more important to Zoro than his dream to him, because his is just a kind of like a fairy tale.
Yeah, well, and Sanji A has a really good heart, and B, we have reason to believe, based on later stuff, that Sanji doesn't think very highly of himself, and he's always the first one to sacrifice himself for his crew. He jumps into the water anytime anyone is drowning, and he wanted to throw himself in front of Kuma. So I'm not at all surprised that he tried, but it just kind of goes to show where his heart is at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, really quick, can I just say, people get into a lot of back and forth about, like, which character is stronger? Which character would win in a fight? And I'm not really interested in those kind of discussions. But I will say, for me, this was the definitive Zoro is stronger than Sanji scene. Period.
Yeah, and I mean, I like Sanji a lot. I like a lot of the Straw Hats a lot. I don't think that it makes any sense for someone to say, oh yeah, Sanji could easily defeat Zoro. Maybe if they were in some, like, emotional situation where Zoro had lost his confidence or something, like if his heart wasn't in it, but I think physically, I don't think there's any doubt that Luffy can persevere the most, Zoro the second most, and Sanji the third most, but they all have superhuman thresholds.
Yeah, compared to, like, Chopper, they're all doing fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I also asked Mac, how did Zoro survive, more or less, because that was a lot of pain. Like, even a small little bubble made him, like, scream out, and there was a lot of blood. So was it just force of will, or is it something else? And they responded with, part of me thinks it's the will of Shonen that saved him, but there's the other part of me that wonders what the hell Asura is, and Zoro's weird connection with his sword, curses, and then I fall down a theory rabbit hole. Demon-esque imagery suits Zoro's aesthetic, but I wonder. I wonder too. You
spend a lot of time, more time than I do, watching One Piece theories on YouTube. So do you think there's a connection between Zoro and the demon stuff and having been able to survive? Do you think he, like, went to hell and...
I don't know for sure. I do think that it's partially a strength of will thing. He's just that physically tough. But I do also wonder... I don't know, maybe there is some connection with the cursed swords. It hasn't really come up a lot. It really only came up the one time when he first got the sword, and then pretty much never at all again. But, we never saw him use the Ashura technique before he got the cursed blades. And I mean, the cursed blades were very early in his One Piece career, but still, I do wonder if maybe there's some truth to that maybe swords have kind of a will of their own. We've seen, Ryuma talk about, like, the sword wants to belong to you and that sort of thing. So maybe there is something about that. Maybe there is, like, some kind of strength in Zoro's sword that he can kind of, like, borrow unconsciously, and he'll learn how to do that later.
I like that. That's a really interesting idea.
And would you like to read the tweet from good buddy of the podcast, Trey?
Absolutely.
Not saying that Mac isn't a good buddy of the podcast, but I think Trey was one of the first people that we saw interacting with us at a very regular rate.
Trey says, there's a lot to love in these episodes. Kuma's overwhelming power, Zoro and Sanji, Zoro and Kuma, but to no one's surprise, the big thing from these episodes is Brook's song. The chapter this pulls from, 488, is my favorite chapter in all of One Piece. Thriller Bark leads up to this moment for me, as we have the various times of Brook's life where he has played the song. Alone on the ship, together with his crew, together with his new friends, for Laboon, and through it all the words, if you lose your nerve, this breath could be your last, but if you just hold on, the morning sun will rise, to culminate in Solo, what Brook was and will be again, but for now he is a pirate sailing the seas again to see Laboon.
That's incredible.
Those were some very emotional and well thought out thoughts.
Yeah.
Well put thoughts, I guess I meant to say. Trey also on Twitter linked to the video where he reviewed this chapter, and it's a very emotional chapter. You could see that he was getting a little emotional just talking about it, and he actually said he had to cut the review short because he couldn't stop tearing up and it was interfering with his ability to speak. So I'm grateful to have people with so much passion for One Piece.
Well, and it's things like this that proves that fiction matters. There are some... I'm just going to construct this man made out of straw for a second here. It seems like there are some who say, oh, it's just fiction, it doesn't matter, it doesn't impact reality, so what's the point? But there's a lot of different fiction that has affected people in different ways, and... things like, this is slightly different than One Piece, but, things like 1984 or Animal Farm or whatever, they speak about certain tendencies within human nature. Lord of the Flies does it too. One Piece is not quite as directly political or directly, it doesn't have quite the same message as those ones do. It's not necessarily about human desires or something. But it does have brilliant moments like this. You know, there's a reason that people really love Kobe and Usopp and all these other characters who have, you know, very realistic reactions to things, very human emotions, even given the fact that they're fighting this weird bat monster thing that swallowed 1,000 shadows and can punch an island in half. Like, that's all ridiculous on a surface level, but when it comes down to it, it's, you know, it's much more personal than that for most of the characters' arcs and such.
Absolutely. Well, and let's talk a little bit about the lyrics to Big Sake, because a lot of people think that this could be foreshadowing. We have the allusion to the morning sun, which is also called dawn, which a lot of people have speculated the D is for, right?
Sure.
Luffy is going to bring about the dawn of a new age. And then we also have this line, never ending, ever wandering, our funny traveling tale.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had a lot of allusions to laughter being important in One Piece, and if I can just put up the spoiler flag, well, maybe not. Maybe not. I'll skip that for now. But it's important. It's an important line, and I think that you should remember it. And when you get all caught up on One Piece, we'll talk about it.
Sure. Well, and not only that, but I believe that Lola or someone at the party, it's been a little while since we watched this episode in particular, but I thought that someone mentioned that almost every pirate knows this song.
They mentioned it over and over and over in these episodes, and then Lola says, oh, if it's this song, we can all sing along. Luffy knows it, even though he set out only recently, and
Sure.
Brook is from 50 years ago.
Yeah. So I do think that lends credibility to does Big Sake have a deeper meaning, because it seems like it's the pirate anthem. And we know that Gold Roger started the pirate era, but I believe if you start to look at the history, I don't think that he was the first pirate. I just think he was the first successful pirate to get to the final island. So why are there so many pirates, and why is there so much, you know, belief in, like, treasures and all these crazy dreams out there and stuff? And I think it all ties together into kind of a thesis, and I think it has to do with the ancient civilization. I don't have concrete proof of that, but if there was a group 800 years ago that was really cool and they knew that they were going to die, that's what Clover said, you know, this kingdom was defeated by what became the world government, maybe they found ways, you know, with the poneglyphs or with songs or with rumors or legends to inspire the next generation to inherit their will and take up the fight. Like, it all comes together. Oda's galaxy brain in this series.
He really is. Well, and the laughter thing, I think, is important to the themes of the show overall, because the show is really about freedom, and it emphasizes that through Luffy fighting for people's freedoms anywhere he goes. And what is the ultimate freedom? Well, the freedom to laugh at things. Gold Roger and Luffy both, when they were about to be executed, they smiled and they laughed. Even though their freedom was about to be taken from them in the form of their life, they still had the freedom to laugh.
Yeah, absolutely. I do also want to really quickly circle back to the D thing. We need to do an episode about the initial of D, and we can go through and officially cite our sources and go and say, in chapter 13 on page 2... But in general, there's a lot of theories about what the D could stand for. Is it dream? That'd be kind of cool. Could it be demon or devil because of the devil fruits? Okay, maybe. Could it be dawn because the original version of One Piece was called Romance Dawn? That's what the first chapter was called, I believe. I don't have my notes in front of me. But I also like the idea that D is actually, I think it's called a pictograph, where it's not actually a letter, it's just D is the closest letter to the thing they were trying to draw, and it's actually a sideways smile. Because when Luffy was about to get executed and he smiled, and Smoker said, all the members of D smile before they're about to die, the smile was like in a very perfect D shape, and you have a lot of characters that, you know, lived and they loved life, and then you have a bunch of other characters like Wapple or Blackbeard, it seems, or all these other people that are like, oh, we want to punish people or whatever, and so I think that it's all about the adventure, and it's all about smiling, and it's all about, you know, smiles are, I've seen this in a lot of fiction, but I don't know if it's ever been stated in One Piece, but it's kind of a universal language type of thing. Like, you could be talking to someone and they could be speaking a completely different language, but if they're human and they smile at something, chances are, you know, you're sharing something in that moment.
Exactly. Except monkeys. Don't smile at monkeys. They'll bite your face off.
Yeah, well, and there is the back part of some cynical voice in my head was like, you know, people can smile sarcastically, so I guess not every time, but in general, you know, it's a gesture that I don't think in any culture is considered particularly rude. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert, but it seems like something that is generally A+, thumbs up, good thing.
Yeah, the smile, the hands up, like I'm not holding anything.
Oh, yeah.
Like these are all things that we use cross-culturally to communicate peaceful intentions.
Absolutely.
I had another thought when you were talking about the Ds. Oh, Oda. Oda is very talented. Oh my god, his name isn't Oda. It's O-D. I'm sure somebody else has made that joke. I apologize. But he's very talented at setting up your expectations in one direction, and then his bowling ball goes in another direction and still knocks down all the pins.
Yes.
And if you look at the pieces, like, it's clear that it would have led there all along, but he still catches you by surprise. So I definitely think that, like, this whole time we're all like, what's the D stand for? Here are some words. And Oda's going to be like, haha, you fools. It wasn't words. It was the sound you make when it's sword or something silly, right? So I'm looking forward to what he does with that.
Certainly. At the same time, I just want to circle back to, I think it was a quote from George R. R. Martin, author of Song of Ice and Fire, or Game of Thrones as it's better known. That's such a weird title for the series, man, because fire and ice don't seem to... Anyways, okay, doesn't matter. He has said that while he's on the internet and on message boards or whatever, he's seen people who have been able to figure out the different clues that he set down, and they've kind of been able to guess where the story is going. And he said, do I change it, or do I keep the ending that I wrote? I'm going to keep the ending that I wrote because I can't change it. Like, the clues are there for a reason, so if I change it, it has to fit all those clues, and it can only lead to one inevitable conclusion. So I'm not against the idea that someone has figured it out, but I still think that the way that Oda portrays it is going to be different than someone who just kind of like pulls out a dictionary or tries to figure out what the D could stand for. I think it's going to have much more significance or tie into the little details that we didn't even notice. For
sure. Like, Devil is the most obvious choice, and partially for that reason, I'm pretty sure it's the least likely.
Sure.
But I really do think there's a lot of credence to the Dawn theory. I like the idea that it's a pictogram for either a rising sun or a smile or both. I'm excited.
Absolutely. I think Oda has said too that he was curious. He might change the ending based off of if someone guessed it, but I'm not. I don't have a source for that, but I have seen people offhandedly mention it, but I don't know if they're hypothesizing or if they are saying that, yes, on April 5th, he said this in an interview.
Yeah, well, and we talked about this in our Stampede episode, but he put things into Stampede that he was hoping to save for the final arc in One Piece, just like Horikoshi put stuff into the latest My Hero movie that was endgame for him.
Exactly. Okay, so I think that about does it for thoughts from the crew. Before we wrap up, we have two things. One's going to be very super quick. We want to shout out Band, who supported us on Patreon, and once you do that, you get a shout out on the show. So thanks, Band. Welcome to the crew. I think technically Trey and Band get to pick their positions on the crew, maybe, if they want to come up with, like, OCs. But I think Trey gets first pick because he joined first, and then Band gets second pick. I did also hypothesize on Twitter that this show is a lot like a Super Sentai season, where Kat and I are like the first Rangers who joined the team, but maybe all the other Patreon supporters are other members of the team, and then people who don't support us on Patreon but still, like, you know, interact with us or leave comments or that sort of thing, they're maybe the technicians on the giant dino robots. They're not necessarily front and center, but they still play a critical role.
They're doing an important job. Thank you, Ticket-kun, for supporting the podcast. I'm looking forward to when Trey hears this episode and he laughs at that joke, because I feel like he's one of our only listeners who will.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many people have watched it, but I do think that Trey is most likely to have a monkey puppet, just from how I've seen him on the Full Spectrum podcast. Okay, now I do want to move on to something else. This is something I kind of always wanted to do at the end of every arc and saga and stuff, but gosh, am I disorganized. So I very much apologize that we haven't been doing this consistently. But if One Piece is sort of like an essay or something like that, and each saga kind of touches on different ideas or whatever, and Oda's trying to get a single point across, or maybe multiple points across, what is the point of Thriller Bark, in your opinion? Or am I putting you on the spot? Because
no, I've got something for you.
Good.
So, Brook and Moria both experienced traumatic death of their crews.
Holy crap, I never actually recognized that. Yeah, go on.
And they responded to it in very different ways. Moria responded to it with, well, I can't have friends who are alive because they'll just die on me. Whereas Brook never really gave up the hope of finding new friends, and he never gave up the hope of getting back to the one friend he knew was waiting for him. And so every major battle in One Piece, you've mentioned this before, is a battle of philosophies. And I think the philosophy here was really hope versus despair, and hope wins. Brook is able to find new friends, and he's able to set off again to hopefully be reunited with Laboon.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to say, going back to, does the D stand for dawn, and there's a mention of the sun rising in Dink's sake. Well, I think we mentioned this earlier, but Moria's shadows, or the people who don't have their shadows, aren't destroyed in the light of, like, whatever the Sunny's lighting system is. I don't know if that's electrical power or if it's lanterns, but we also saw one of the members of the Victim Association have a lantern, and it didn't kill him or Luffy didn't kill him despite not having a shadow at that point. So it's only sunlight specifically, and so I think that also ties into kind of hopeful versus despair. The night and the daylight are symbolisms often associated with freedom and hope for sun and daylight, and then nighttime is oppressive and dark and scary and mysterious. I also put forward that Moria is trying to gain power by controlling others. He wants other people to be the king of he wants other people to make him the king of the pirates in his place. Luffy wants to become king of the pirates of his own power, but he still couldn't beat Moria until he was given the shadows of other people, and his crew had the important task of stopping oars or whatever. So I think the idea in that sense is sort of, there are some really scary big shot opponents that could punch an island in half, or various other physical feats, or they have crazy fruit powers. You haven't seen the half of it if you're only, here in the anime. But in the end, if you work together with people that you trust and you all put forth your greatest effort, together you can overcome these obstacles of, like, these impossibly giant monsters and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. I'm going to very loosely paraphrase from something that is not One Piece related at all, even tangentially, but a character in a book is explaining chess to another character, and they go, yeah, the king is back here, and that's the most important piece, and these are the other pieces in front. And the character they're explaining it to goes, that's stupid. A king should be in front, leading their people. And that's very much the difference between Moria and Luffy. Luffy is not letting his crew fight for him and running away from the danger himself. Luffy is there being a part of the charge and directing people, even a little bit at the end, But Moria is like, no, you guys do it. I'm just gonna chill.
Yeah, well, and this goes into a character that will show up later, but there are pirate crews that seem to more focus on gathering crew members based off of their strength rather than, friendship. Yeah. And I mean, it's tacky to say that friendship is power, but there is a certain level of trust that Luffy puts in his crew members that I don't think, like Moria said, Perona, you take care of the Wandering Samurai, you and Absalom. But I don't know if that was trust or if it was laziness, just he didn't want to deal with it. But Luffy absolutely is like, I tell them to do it, they're going to do it. My favorite line from Watership Down, which is a silly book that in a lot of places was a little too slow for me when I was reading in high school, but the bad guy is, all the different societies in this book represent different forms of government. And so this bad guy, I think he's like authoritarianism or something where, like, might makes right. And he's fighting this other character who is the strongest member of his warren or crew, whatever you want to call it. And the strong guy goes, I won't back down because my commander ordered me to. I can't lose because that's my duty to him. And this guy who thinks of everything in terms of strength is like, wait, you're as strong as me and there's someone else who's your commander? That's impossible. And he ends up losing at some point. But the secret is that their leader wasn't physically strong. The leader was like the Usopp of the group, and this guy was like the Zoro or the Luffy. And I think that's the same way with Luffy himself. Like, his people have such absolute belief in him, but it's not necessarily because of his strength, and it's not necessarily that he is the strongest, although he is that as well.
Well, and you just have to think of that Zoro quote, right? I've done all I can, now it's your turn. If you don't finish it, I'll kick your ass. Does Moria have that kind of trust in his crew? And will he finish it if they don't?
Yeah.
Or is he just going to be like, well, I guess it's over. Let's go do something else.
Yeah, I would love to apply that quote to everyone else. Does Crocodile truly believe that the members of Broke Works are going to get things done, or does he just see them as disposable pawns, and if they screw up, he will take their place? If you look at Eneru as four priests, did he think the priests were, his defense, or did he just think that they were playing a fun game and he could take care of it himself?
Well, and Crocodile, I think, would even be too proud to pass it on to somebody else. Like, is he even capable of identifying, I've done all I can?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's more like, how do they use their pawns before they step into the battle, I guess, for the bad guy pirates? Because usually they kind of sit on their throne from the background and they watch everything fall apart. But, when Mr. 3 failed to kill them, Crocodile was like, all right, I'm going to eliminate you. How would Luffy respond if Zoro went out to do something and Zoro came back and he's like, I wasn't able to do it, boss? First off, Zoro would do it because of that trust thing. But if he came back, Luffy wouldn't kill him. Luffy wouldn't be like, you failed me. Luffy would just be like, all right, you did what you could. We'll do what we can. And it's not necessarily Luffy. Sometimes it's like Zoro tries to do a thing and he can't quite do it, and then Usopp shows up. It's this beautiful network of friendship that, like, it embodies the power of friendship in a way that most other anime can't quite do.
Hey, Cook, can we team up for about 10 seconds?
Absolutely. Okay, so that, I think, about wraps us up on the Thriller Bark Saga. Next episode, we have the final episode of the Thriller Bark Saga, Season 5, but it's not Thriller Bark. It is episodes 382 through 384. Warning, they are filler. I've never seen the first two episodes, and the third one is crap. It's bad. We also have the One Piece Romance Dawn story, which is a special. I haven't seen it, and I believe it's the animated version of the short manga that Oda put out before he created One Piece. It was sort of like a test run to see if people would be interested, and has a lot of the same characters, but I think some of them have slightly different roles.
And we've got the story of Chopper,
which is, the 9th movie, and it's a retelling of Drum Kingdom, but with a twist, because I believe that Frankie and Robin are included in the movie as crew members. So, yeah, absolutely. Be sure to hit us up on Twitter with your thoughts on those episodes, but other than that, that's been your final thought.
Final spooky thought. Outro goes here.
What a great episode of King of the What Now, your One Piece podcast that started from the very beginning and stars these two doofuses. If you want to follow us on social media, Twitter is the best place to do that. I am at KOTWN_pod.
And I am at Pirate Ghost Host.
Absolutely, yes. We share all sorts of thoughts on there, some related to the podcast, some related to other things. But you can also reach us through email at kingofthewhatpod@gmail.com, or you can also find us on Patreon. We would love some subscribers or supporters, whatever the technical term is. Patrons. So fancy and grown up. And you can find that at patreon.com/kingofthewhatpod. You can find all sorts of things like bonus episodes, and you get to see the full cold open candidates, not just the ones that make it into the episode. Maybe someday if I learn to draw, I'll put stuff up there. We're always looking for suggestions and feedback. And speaking of which,
please take a moment to rate and review our podcast wherever you get us from. So iTunes, Spotify, Scrivener, that's for writing. But wherever you listen to our podcast, take a moment to leave a review. It helps other people find us. We are so grateful to all of our listeners, and we couldn't do this without you.
Absolutely. Word of mouth is super powerful, so if you have a friend who likes One Piece and they haven't heard of us, just direct them to the latest episode. And if they hate us, they can tell us why. And if there's an actionable item, we'll try to please you. That's how this works. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.